Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Shelley Tasker Show here, coming out of Cornwall Revolution Radio.blogspot.com. It's good to have your company. If you would like to join in the live chat, click on the live chat room link at the top right hand side of your screen, just below the player of your choice. Today's date is Wednesday, the 28th of October. Hosted along myself are Charlie Rainbow and Nina Eilertson. Good evening, ladies.
Good evening.
Hi.
And tonight's guest is the awesome Howard Koolman. Good
Hey.
evening, Howard.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on. We have been waiting for this. I've been speaking to you about this probably about, I don't know, the last couple of months.
Yeah.
And we finally pinned you down and we're here.
Great stuff.
So we've
Yeah.
got lots to talk about.
Lots to talk about.
So, as I always say, we need to start at the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? When there's so many things, so many facets to your diamond, Howard.
Yeah.
Every time we've been chatting, I'm like,
I know.
okay. And I could talk to you for literally hours, and I know we've got
Yeah.
lots to talk about. So, perhaps the best way, when did you start waking up?
That's a very good question. I think actually, it's just interesting. The first thing that popped into my mind was when I was about 12 years old, and I used to have these old books, these old encyclopedias, and I remember going through them. They were really old. I mean, they were 1950s, and they were in my bedroom. And when I couldn't get sleep at night, I'd be having a look at them. And then suddenly I read something, and I thought, hey, man, that's not true. And I had this belief in my system that said that everything that was in print, everything you read, was the truth. And to see something in an encyclopedia that was actually wrong blew my mind at the time. I was only 12 years old, but it immediately made me start thinking about actually, you can't, doing our own research and checking things, we can know more than what's in print. So that was a real revelation for me. But in terms of the deeper thing about what's going on in the world and everything and all the rabbit holes and things, that the big light bulb went off in May 2018. Although I had kind of sort of skirted around the edges of various subjects before, but I didn't know what to think of them so much.
So, what is you trained to be an astronomer? You did an astronomer course.
Well, I kind of IT engineer for many years in
Right.
corporate and colleges and various things and maths and stuff, and I've always loved science. And then, so I've always had an interest in science, everything. And I even trained to be a science teacher.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, 2018, May. What happened?
May 2000
That's only 2 years ago.
I know, it's not long. May 2018, what happened was I was very interested. After the 2008 financial crash, I became very interested. My dad used to teach economics at university, and my mum was an astrologer, so I've got a very strange mix in terms of my parentage. But anyway, so from the 2008 crash, I had this interest that kind of built up from the financial banking system and trying to figure out what the hell was going on with that whole thing. And then in around the 2018 area, 2017, 2018, I knew there was another crash coming because the problems of the 2008 crash never got solved. They were just, the can got kicked down the road, basically. So I knew something was brewing. And so I was doing research on the financial system and where it was heading, stumbled across a YouTube channel called the X22 Report. And he does 2 videos every day. First one is a financial video, and the second one is his more general geopolitical video. So I stumbled across the financial video, and he had some amazing information. Everybody was like, he had a big following on YouTube, and it was fascinating. But this letter kept on cropping up, which was Q.
Oh, really?
And Q was in the chat, so I was looking through the comments thinking, Q, why is everybody hanging on this blooming Q thing? So I had a little reply thing, little comments with some of the people in the comment section. They said, really, if you want to understand Q, I had to go to Praying Medic's YouTube channel. So I hopped across to Praying Medic's YouTube channel and then listened to 3 videos by him about what was happening in the political system in America and how Q fits into it. And suddenly everything made sense. I mean, it was like a light bulb moment. All these little pieces of the jigsaw puzzles, which I kind of been researching over the years, but didn't really know where to put and what to think about them. Suddenly everything fitted together. And it was a major, oh my God moment. And that was it.
Okay.
And I cried for 2 days. I mean, I literally was in shock.
So what did you find out then?
So what I went...
Bear in mind,
Yeah.
we're quite, what would you call us? newbies to Q and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So talk to us like children.
Okay.
And what were you, like you said that it brought loads of things together? You've been researching over the years. What sort of things were you looking into, like that it joined the dots and stuff?
Yeah, so there were lots of little rabbit holes and little peculiar things. So the thing that I guess it pulled together was I knew that because during the 2016 US election, there was this face-off between Hillary and Trump. And I didn't really know what to make of Trump. I knew that Hillary was really bad. She was just being outed as being a terrible liar. I mean, there's loads of things she was saying that just simply weren't true and everybody could see it. And also I could see that the political tensions around the world were escalating. So like tensions with Russia were getting more kind of tense. North Korea was saber rattling, and it looked like they were developing nuclear weapons. That was a bit scary. We had ISIS, which was rampaging across the Middle East and getting stronger and stronger. And Iraq was seen to be kind of being eaten up by ISIS, as is Syria. And then Syria was just like everybody was involved in Syria at the time. It was just a massive bomb fest, really, wasn't it? So it was all looking a bit bleak. And I couldn't, it just looked very dark, and it didn't look like there was any light in any of this. Plus the environment, with the destruction of the rainforest and various other things, it all looked very, very dark. So Trump got elected, and I think the first thing that happened that Trump did, which really made me think, was he tore up the transatlantic trade partnership. And he also tore up the Trans-Pacific partnership. There were two massive bits of horrible legislation that was being written by the corporations in secret rooms, and this was all being kind of like. It was kind of there, and it's like the whole of the left community and lots of people were very, very scared about these massive bits of legislation, which were basically going to make corporations more powerful than governments. So the corporations could take the governments to court, and it was just horrible. And the first thing Trump did when he came to power is he tore them up, and it was just like, oh my God, I didn't expect that. I know that we've just escaped from World War III with Russia and various other places because Hillary didn't get elected. She lost. But I had no idea where Trump was. I just thought Trump was just a businessman doing his, wanting to, do his business stuff, making better hotels and stuff. But he tore up TTIP and he tore up the Transatlantic Trade Partnership. And it was just amazing. And the really bizarre thing about that whole piece was nobody clapped. There was absolute crickets. There was silence, which I found amazing. I just could not understand why nobody was applauding, because it was just an amazing thing. So that was one of the most. That was part. So in May 2018. So Q. So there's the whole thing about Q is that the NSA, National Security Agency, which spies on everybody. It has backdoor access to all our mobile phones, our laptops, all around the world, all the countries. They pretty much know. I mean, they have to know everything about everybody, which means that not only do they know things about you and me, but we're pretty much small fry. They also know about politicians. They also know about all the corrupt people at high level as well. And normally we think about the NSA as being another sort of segment of this corrupt sort of institution. But what if the good guys got hold of all that information? What could they do? Well, you could immediately blackmail all the corrupt people around the planet and actually tell them, well, we're going to clean everything up and you're going to do what we say and then we're going to get rid of you. I mean, it's an amazing thought. So Q came. So when I watched Prayer Medic was talking about the Democrats, these 13 angry Democrats at the time that I was listening to it, and saying how they were trying to get rid of Trump and they were spying on Trump. And I'm thinking, why are they doing that? And then it was saying that Trump actually was asked to run for president. He didn't actually. He tried to run for president several times in the past. But the actual people backing up Trump wasn't the people you normally think about as being like businessmen or other fellow. It's the NSA, the military, wanted Trump to run for president.
NSA is who again? Sorry.
So the NSA, the National Security. So there's various agencies. So let's just run through a few of them because a lot of people don't know about them. So the National Security Agency are a division within the Pentagon, if you like. They're a military intelligence, and what they do is they gather the intelligence and then they file it and store it. And then the other agencies then have access to it. So the CIA is Central Intelligence Agency. That got created just after the Second World War. And its function, the CIA's function, is to monitor and spy and do operations abroad. Okay, so it's not the CIA is not supposed to be doing operations within the US, just like MI6 and SIS is operations abroad for the UK. And then we have the FBI. So the FBI are basically domestic for the US. So they do all the domestic stuff. And then they dovetail into another three-letter agency called the Department of Justice. So the Department of Justice has the FBI coming out of it. The CIA kind of like, well, one of the things we learn is that the CIA are rogue. Basically, they've done horrible things, and there's lots of it's out there in the public domain, a lot of it. Various operations in South America and everything, where they were just doing their own thing. And there's loads and loads of documentation about them raising money through drugs smuggling operations and weapons. And then there was the whole Iran-Contra scandal. There was just loads and loads of scandals. You don't have to go far to find scandals with the CIA. And also at the beginning, there was a lot of controversy about having the Senate and the Congress having oversight over the CIA. And there was quite a lot of stuff around that right at the beginning in the 50s. And what came out of that essentially was that the CIA have they don't want to report to the Congress. They don't want to tell Congress what they're doing. And so they are pretty much their own thing, doing their own thing, and of course John F. Kennedy found that out, and he didn't like what the CIA were doing, and so he wanted to do something about it, and then he's assassinated.
Yeah.
So John F. Kennedy is a major moment, sort of a moment of truth, really, for the whole of the US underworld, really, as to who's in charge.
Oh, it's just made all my hair stand up on end.
Yeah, and then the CIA turned around and said, we'll make this word conspiracy theories so that anyone that asks any questions about the murder of them, we'll slap that thing on. Yeah. So when people call you conspiracy theory nowadays, it's kind of like, well, it doesn't mean anything, does it? Because of the way it was formed.
Yeah, that's right. And then there are many conspiracies that we know are real. So I mean, you can actually go and look up lists of conspiracies that turned out to be true, and there are lots of them. But of course, we don't. That's not. You want people to know about that, because then if people knew about that, they might start asking questions about all the other conspiracies.
That's why they're called theories, aren't they? It's to make people believe it's not true.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's what we ought to do, actually, with everything going on at the moment. Find out all of the theories and start saying, well, actually, all of these came true.
Yeah.
Anyway. Sorry, Howard.
And for anybody out there that wants to research any of this, at the moment, Google is doing a massive load of suppression at the moment. If you try and search for stuff on Google, you will just not find any information about anything that's slightly controversial, because Google is suppressing it all. So if you want to do any research, I highly recommend people doing their searches on Yahoo. And it's a very interesting to do a comparison where literally you get 2 or 3 search engines up side by side, do the same search on all of them, and then compare the results. So if you do that, for instance, with Google, Bing, and Yahoo, and search Pizzagate, you'll be amazed.
Right.
You'll be amazed at the difference between the what comes out in the search results for those different things. And another thing that you'll find is that Google so they won't hide it completely. What they'll do is they'll give you references to articles which are very critical of something, rather than giving you articles where actually helpful information. So you get all the negatives through Google. Whereas Yahoo is much better. You'll get a much cleaner. There's a lot less filtering happening on Yahoo for some reason.
I wonder why, because like Yahoo's obviously, I assumed that they were just as mainstream.
I know, it's very, very strange. I mean, there are Russian search engines, there's Chinese search engines, but on the other one that a lot of people wanted to move over to, which was DuckDuckGo, that originally I was using that was supposed to use a number of search engines and then pull the results. The only problem with DuckDuckGo now, I don't use it anymore, is because Google bought it.
Right.
Google bought it, and then they're doing the same thing that they do with their own search engine, which is shadow banning, which is pushing all the interesting information right down the search list and putting all the rubbish at the top.
Can't believe they bought that. Oh my god.
Well, that's right. They're a predator. Yeah. They're a massive predator company.
What about Brave? Because I heard that's
Brave is a browser. Brave is very, very good. I do use Brave. It's very fast and it's very light, and it's got all the advertising filtering built into the browser, and it doesn't send all your information off to various other places. So
I've been using Brave, but DuckDuckGo on that.
Yeah, so I wouldn't use DuckDuckGo.
No,
I would use Yahoo and just use Google, Yahoo, and Bing. You know, I mean, but just aware that if you're doing controversial stuff, use Yahoo. Do check Yahoo.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because whenever people got these arguments, they always straight into Google, don't we? We all use Google, and it's like we know who owns Google and everything like that. So
yeah, that's right. And if you're looking to, how to water your petunias, Google's great, and Yahoo is great. Yeah. But if you want to find out about Pizzagate or anything that the establishment are trying to hide, don't go to Google. But also go to Yahoo and check out Yahoo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So where were we at?
So we were at with JFK. JFK was a pivotal moment. So there were two reasons that we believe that JFK was assassinated. Nothing to do with Russia and the patsy, the guy who's alleged to have shot him. So what was JFK talking about at the time of his assassination? He was outing secret societies that were nefarious and obviously had very powerful people in them, and were steering the country and using the CIA for nefarious operations. And that was one of the things. And there's a lovely speech where JFK actually talks about that, and he's talking to a load of reporters, and he talks about all these secret societies, not being any good for the country. And then the other thing and the other little piece of that is he also said that he wanted to tear up the CIA into 1,000 pieces and cast it to the winds. So, I mean, that's quite a threat to the CIA. So the CIA wouldn't have liked that at all. And then the other thing he talked about was he was trying to build up the Rust Belt. So there was a lot of the steel industry and various other industries were really struggling at the time of JFK. And he wanted to raise money, pump money into them to build those industries back up again. And so he went to the Federal Reserve and asked the Federal Reserve, I need to borrow X billion, and we're going to funnel it in. And the Federal Reserve basically said, no, we're not going to lend you any money. So JFK decided, well, I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm going to find another way of doing it. So what he did was he decided to create something called the Federal Note. He's going to create his own little currency within the banking system to raise money. Basically, it's like I guess it'd be like bonds, wouldn't it, or something? To raise money so you could put money and build up the thing. And of course, the Federal Reserve saw that as a competition, because the Federal Reserve also, for people, it's a private bank. It's not public. It's like a private institution. So the Federal Reserve saw that as a kind of like an attack. So then you've got two big establishments, very, very powerful organizations who saw John F. Kennedy as a massive threat. So the Federal Reserve and the CIA. And we believe that the CIA basically took John F. Kennedy out to protect all the stuff that was going on around secret societies and everything. And then they did it in such a way, did it so publicly, that it was a statement to anybody that knew what was going on, that basically the CIA are in full control. And so the CIA were in full control. They made it clear to everybody it was, all the powerful people that is, but kept all the people asleep by having this patsy. And then ever since, every president has either been controlled or part of the CIA. So we've got George W. Bush Sr. actually was a CIA agent. In fact, he was a CIA agent at the time JFK was killed, because he said he doesn't know. Because he became CIA director, and then from being director of the CIA became president. I mean, how suspicious and how, oh my God, it's terrible. Sort of blending of different offices, isn't it?
Yeah.
Horrific. So, yeah. So it's pretty. So, I mean, that's a major marker point. Interesting. Now, if we want to go into little... so I have in my mind, I have things which I'm kind of pretty certain about, and I have things which are nice stories and ideas, and I just hold them there as a possibility. So I have quite a few of those. So as a story, as an idea, as a possibility, there is this lovely little story which says that when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, all the people that were supporting him and were wanting to drain the swamp back in JFK's day, 1963, they obviously were horrified that he got killed, realised that the CIA were in full control and that they were in danger themselves, and then created a secret group to basically take all the corruption down at some point in the future when they were felt able to do so.
And that's where Trump comes in, right?
So, well, we think, if we say Q, what is Q, who is Q, when did Q start? Some people might say Q might have started just after JFK got assassinated. Q might be decades and decades.
They're all anonymous, Q, aren't they?
So, well, Q posts on this, used to post on 8chan, then it moved to 4chan, and then it's on 8kun. So it's on this anonymous, board. So, we don't know who posts it, although we know from Q proofs. So if anybody asks, what do we know about Q? We know Q is somebody very close to the president. We know it's probably more than one person. We know that it has the highest level of security clearance. In fact, the highest level of security clearance is called Q clearance. So,
what do you mean by it's got the highest level of security?
In the sense that they have access to everything on the NSA database. They have access to everything in there, which means they have access to everybody's mobile phones, laptops, all the information, everything. So that's Q clearance. So we're pretty sure of that because of the posts that have been put out, and also by certain events have happened, and Q has basically given us a heads up that something was happening. It happened, and there's no way that Q could have known that. And one of the big ones is Senator John McCain's death. That's one of the big sort of things, is that Q knew the precise time and date of his death 1 month before it happened.
Oh, okay.
So there is a Q post about that.
But then that couldn't have happened without it being planned to be that, right?
That's right. So is Q in charge? So Q must have either been in charge or somehow known. But the date and time that was posted on the newspaper articles, all the newspapers use, that time and date was known to Q, and Q put it out there. A month before, yes, that's right.
So did people just disregard that, or didn't take it seriously, or were they waiting, or?
So it's a mixture. So those that followed Q and kind of are really interested, it was a wow moment for us. It was like, oh my goodness me, how did Q know that? And we just all took it for granted. It was just like, but for other people, I think people just didn't quite realise how profound that is. I think it kind of goes over people's heads. It's like, it's kind of a bit too much, really, to compute, really. And it's just like, well, I don't know what to think of that.
So Q and Non are like on Twitter. Are they the same group?
So you've got Q. There is only one Q. But Q might be a group. Within the Pentagon, very close to Trump, and the Q proofs demonstrate that. Q and Non, so that we call that Q and Non because it's an anonymous Q. Then we have, underneath all that, we have all the Q researchers, of which there are thousands and thousands. So I'm one of those. I've been following it. So ever since I follow it, May 2018, I've been a Q researcher, Q follower. And and then they're all over the world. I mean, there are Q's posted pictures of Q followers all over the world.
Do they call it Q drops when they have something come out?
Yes. So a drop is a post that happens on the bulletin board from Q.
And you've got to figure out what it is that.
Yeah, so they're a little bit cryptic. Q likes to be very brevity, doesn't use a lot of words.
And do they post this stuff then on like Twitter?
No, it's always on this one thing, 8kun, or 8chan or 4chan. It's always on this. Now, the reason it's on there is because it's anonymous, but also every post has to have a signature. That signature cannot be forged, cannot be faked. So
ACUN, so what's that? Is that a website? Is that...
It is a website, yeah, 8KUN, so 8KUN. But it's a very, it's not a user-friendly website, I would say. I've been there, and I've thought about posting on some of the research boards, but it's not very easy.
Right.
And it's also a bit of a wild west of the internet. It's like, because it's not censored, anything goes. So there's a lot of unsavoury stuff in there as well. It is divided up into sections, and Q has got its own little section where he can only post and nobody else. And then there's a Q research board, which is another section where Q might post, but also researchers post their stuff, post their stuff as well. But it's not terribly user-friendly.
So do you believe Q then, they're on side with the government, they're on side with Trump at the moment?
Yeah, so
they are part of it.
Yeah, so that's right. So if we think about it, so Q is there's a lovely photograph that appeared actually quite early on when Trump came to power, which was him with all his generals standing behind him, and there's a famous quote where he says, "There's a storm coming," and the media asked him, "Oh, what's this storm?" He said, "Oh, I can't tell you, but there's a storm coming," and all his generals are grinning behind him. So we think that is Q. So we think all the generals.
Okay.
So a few of the generals that are standing behind him are Q, basically, and they're top people within the Pentagon. So they're the people that actually run the NSA, the National Security Agency, and the various other agencies. So, yeah.
Well, that's a good starting point for me, because I've been like Googling Q and stuff, and I'm just like no further. It's been a total head bleep, actually. But okay, so we've got to like Q.
Yep.
Right.
One little thing I'd say as well, some of the posts are signed.
Right.
Little sort of like a phrase or a letter at the end of a post, and they'll repeat that. So Q, often there's a Q at the end of a post. But sometimes we get Q plus at the end of a post. And so everybody's scratching their heads, why has Q signed this Q plus? And so people, obviously researchers do some connections, and often Q researchers are looking at Trump's posts, because Trump posts and the Q posts seem to be connected. And a lot of the Q proofs are about the Trump tweets and Q posts happening at exactly the same time. Or there might be a missing letter, and then the letter appears as an extra letter in a Q post. There's a lot of
very cryptic.
Interesting cryptic coding, and people who love cryptic puzzles and sort of things like that, then you should definitely look at Q, because it's fascinating.
I'd like to look at it, but I can't even do Sudoku.
So Q plus, we believe Q plus is actually Trump himself.
Oh, okay.
So when a Q posts, so Trump has got his own posts, we believe, Q plus posts. Yeah.
Right, I'm writing down these little snippets.
And if you want to go and look at the Q posts, the easiest way is not to go to ACUN, but to go to the QAlerts app. QAlerts.app.
Okay.
That seems to be the one. There was another one. There used to be one called QMap.pub, but that's been brought down. I hope it comes back, but at the moment we're at qalerts.app. So if you go there, you will see all the posts, and you can search them, filter them, and
I kept hearing about this Q Maps.
Yeah. So QMap was a lovely website. It had it wasn't just the Q posts though; it was lots of information that researchers had pulled together and kind of put into a very presentation. So it had lots of the people that were involved in the corruption, and also the good guys in the US. It showed who had been killed, that under mysterious circumstances, and various things about them. I mean, there was lots and lots of information on there. One of the other things I used to love was the graph showing the number of sealed indictments going up and up and up and up and up. So maybe we should say a little bit something about what a sealed indictment is.
Yes, I would like to know.
So in the US, when you're going to take somebody to court, the FBI will create a document, and it's called an indictment. And generally they're public, so they post it up on the Department of Justice website, and people can see them and say, oh, somebody's got an indictment here. They're being called into court for face charges of blah, 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 blah. But when but of course when a person goes to court, they may not actually be guilty. It's just an indictment. So they might be found not guilty. Now, that is a problem for VIPs, because you don't really want a VIP. He's a very powerful person, or maybe he's a politician or whatever, if he's got an open indictment against him, he's going to look pretty bad, even if he then is found innocent 2 years later, because justice runs slowly, So what they have now is they have sealed indictments for people that are that's sensitive. Sealed indictments are secret indictment. So the indictment's being built up by the FBI. They investigate it in such a way that the people don't know who's actually under investigation. So they interview everybody around the person, and they're very, very careful about not alluding to what the case is about. So the person gets investigated secretly, and then the indictment is created. But when it's put up onto the Department of Justice website, you don't see anything. All you see is sealed indictment. That's it. You don't know who it's for, how many people, because actually maybe a group. But the number, that entry, is on the Department of Justice website for that state. So every state has got its own Department of Justice website. Now, people have been following, how many sealed indictments do you normally have in a year? Normally it's around 3,000. They're sitting there waiting to be processed. They're on the books, spread out all across America, various states. Now, when Trump got elected, very, very interesting. When Trump got elected, that number of sealed indictments that was sitting there collectively on the Department of Justice website started going up. It didn't stay at 3,000. It started to go up by 5,000 a month.
So he was finding more and more bad people.
So something was happening with the Department of Justice, because the Department of Justice, the FBI, do this. How do you produce 5,000 of these sealed indictments every month? That's a lot of indictments. And how many people have you got to create all those? And this has been going on for every month for 3 years. So we're now at 180,000 sealed indictments.
We're all staring at you like,
I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
And
It's
before
incredible.
he came to power, how many months was it then?
3,000.
Yeah, and how long had that been building up? Ages.
Well, no, 3,000 was just like the tick over. It was always around 3,000.
So now it's 8,000.
Oh, it was 3,000 a
Yeah,
month.
3,000 a year.
3,000
a year.
Yes, 3,000. So there'll be 3,000 on the books.
But then
Yeah.
5,000 a month is what it went to.
Yeah.
But then it
How
was going
long-
up by 5,000 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
it's been 3,000 for ages.
yeah,
probably,
and
hasn't
normally
it?
that 3,000, you'd have so many created a month, 10 or 20 a month or whatever,
Yeah.
maybe 100 a month, and then some would be opened, and then new ones would be put up. So it's a moving sort of turnover of sealed indictments. But this was literally 5,000 being added a month, and they weren't being opened. So they were remaining sealed, and they were remaining on the Department of Justice websites. And so it went up and up and up and up, and we are now at 182,000, I think.
So these are all the bad people then?
All the bad people, we believe, yeah. Some of them are group. I mean, each indictment might be a group. You could have one person having several indictments. I mean, so it's kind of difficult to say how many people were actually involved, at the end of the day with all this.
When you say they're not opened, what did you mean?
So it means that they're secret, that they're on the Department of Justice website.
You can't see them.
Yeah.
We can't see what they're about or who they are.
So they haven't been opened?
No.
By
they're
anybody?
not public. They're not public.
Right, so they're still secret.
They're
you mean?
secret.
Right.
Sealed.
Yeah.
Sealed.
Right.
But at some point, if you're going to... So what happens then is that the sealed indictment is then is given to a jury. So a jury will go through the sealed indictment with a judge, and they will say, is this a valid indictment? Shall we haul this person in to face charges? So a grand jury and a judge will do that. And then when the person is about to be pulled in, that's when the sealed indictment is opened. So there's very, very few. And this QMAP, the reason why I'm covering all this is because QMAP.pub had this graph and showed you how many sealed indictments were in each state. I don't know, it's probably on the internet somewhere else, but I don't actually know where it is. But you could look on California, you could go with various places and it will tell you how many sealed indictments in different locations. But it's a massive, massive number. And
So what kind of crime would you have to commit for you to have one of these?
it's not so much crime, it's more the person. The person has to be important. You don't get a sealed indictment unless it's an important person, because there's no reason to hide it from Joe Bloggs who's just stolen stuff from the
Some sort of
shop round the
crime.
corner. This is like white collar
so it
crime.
is some sort of crime. Then.
Oh yeah, it's white. Yeah, it's going to be all sorts of things. Anything from murder, embezzlement of funds,
Just stealing a couple of bananas and shop.
It ain't going to be that.
I'm all right then. I'm not going to get one. That's good. That's good.
No. Yeah. So I mean, I tend to think, how do you create? How does the Justice Department create 5,000 a month? The only way you can do that is if these sealed indictments have been sitting in a drawer somewhere gathering dust and not on the books. And somebody said, okay, it's time to get all the sealed indictments out that we've been building up for the last 50 years. And then they start getting them out and think, oh yeah, that needs a little bit of updating here, there, and then filed, sent up to the Department of Justice website. That's how you do it. That's the only way I can think of doing it. And I think a lot of the sealed indictments as well were probably also being created by the military.
Okay.
So I think we've got the FBI and the military working hand in glove together, putting all these sealed indictments of 180,000 sealed indictments up onto the DOJ website. And we're waiting for them to be opened because, I mean, the next question is, how quickly do you open them all? I mean...
Oh, I want to open them all now.
I know.
Oh, Christmas is coming around the corner. I bet Chop is so happy, isn't he?
I mean, imagine just arresting like the top sort of 10,000 people. I mean, that's a lot of people, isn't it?
He's arrested.
That's only 10,000 sealed indictments.
Yeah.
So it's 180,000 sealed indictments. I mean, the number is mind-boggling.
He has arrested a lot of people, hasn't he?
There's quite a few. It's in the...
Is it under the paedophile rings and stuff like that?
If you include the paedophile rings, yeah, there's a lot. So there's maybe a few thousands. Yeah.
So he is good.
Oh, there's no question about that.
Now, see, I believe he's good.
Yeah.
And my brother and his wife laughed at me on Friday. They absolutely laughed at me.
So how do we know he's good? So let's go. So the first thing I noticed, he tore up TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade Partnership, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership deals. He tore them up. That was a big... People have got to go back and research that because people have just forgotten about it. And it was a massive, massive thing.
It was a massive
Obama
thing,
wasn't going to tear them up. He was totally in bed with these
corporations. And what were they?
corporations.
They were the corporations.
They were the corporations that were going to
They were
basically
going to screw
governments
America
around the
over
world.
and the EU over
everything. We were all going to be subordinate to the corporations.
Yeah.
So number one, he started tore those up. Absolutely brilliant. And then we have his little round the world trip where he went around the world and did various things. So he went to Saudi Arabia. After he went to Saudi Arabia, and he was received really well in Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Arabians loved him, and when he left, what happened? Saudi Arabia arrested about 200. Maybe 400, I don't know, of the top people in Saudi Arabia. Princes, CEOs, billionaires. They arrested them all, stuck them in a hotel. And again, people might have forgotten this. This happened in 2017.
I never knew about
Was this in mainstream media?
What's that?
Was this?
It was kind of kind of in the mainstream media. But again, it wasn't in there for long. It was kind of in there and then kind of, something, and then it disappeared. So Saudi Arabia arrested loads of people, interrogated them. And one of the most important ones was bin Talal Walid. I hope I've said his name, sort of given it some sort of justice. I'm terrible pronouncing the names. But anyway, he's a very important figure because he sponsored Obama's education. There's a lot of Saudi Arabians who are very wealthy and were...
Sorry, I've got to get my head around all of this.
Because there was rumours that Obama, that they knew Obama was going to be president from a very young age.
Yes.
And from a very young age, they were training him in the right, conditioning him in the right way. From your perspective, do you believe that to be true then? Yeah. So, I mean, basically what the Saudi Arabians were doing, they've got loads of money. They've got more money than anybody else. And they were thinking, what can we do with this money? Well, we can buy influence around the world, can't we? And in fact, the greatest cherry to have would be America. How about Saudi Arabia? We can control America. So how can we do that? Well, maybe we spot the most amazing potentials, young potentials, and then we fund their education, and then they're ours. We've bought them, basically. We own them. So they were funding a lot of people with education and various things, and they were buying companies and doing various things. And they bin Walid, he funded the education for Obama. He funded his college, scholarship and everything. And
And the interesting thing is, when Obama became president, there was this piece of paper that was found with a list of all the people that that Obama put into positions of power around him, and that piece of paper came from Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia chose all the people that Obama was to surround himself with.
Wow.
Goldman Sachs were put in charge of the finance, I mean, Goldman Sachs are totally corrupt, and we thought Obama was going to be brilliant. And then he puts corrupt bankers in charge of the the treasury.
God.
And it's like, so it's a massive, alarm bells should have been ringing when that happened.
But they're ringing now. It's too late. I'm sorry. It's very heavy for me because I find it hard to. I've been listening to this over and over again.
Yeah.
But carry on. What are you thinking at?
Just renamed Obama.
Obama, okay,
right.
yeah. We knew he was a bad one anyway, didn't we?
Yeah, it wasn't clear to start with. I loved Obama when he first came to the power. He has the most amazing speeches. Are just fantastic. Very charismatic. And his use of words and the way he looked, I mean, it was just the golden boy, wasn't he? He was the golden boy and everybody loved him. But after 8 years, what did he do? He started with 3 wars. And by the time he finished, there were 8 wars. And the blacks had a terrible time underneath him, which a lot of people don't realise. More blacks went to prison during his tenure than anybody else. It's terrible. And part of that's also Biden as well is responsible for that too.
Yeah, because I remember when he came in, a lot of people were like, yes, finally. And a lot of that was to do with the fact that he was black. And it's like, he's going to be there for the black people and he's going to be there for, people in general. And
that's right.
Yeah.
So he was full of hope. And I love that. Everybody wanted hope. But they actually wanted hope to translate into action.
Yeah.
And that never happened. We had lots of hope, and no action. And that was a bit puzzling. So why did that happen? Yeah, so that's a bit thing. Anyway, so Trump went to Saudi Arabia and then all this. So Trump stopped all the bribery money coming into Washington, bribing everybody, cut it all off. And how he managed to do that was that he said to the king of Saudi Arabia, he said, how about I tell you all the people are plotting against you?
Oh, right.
And the king said, oh, that sounds great. What can I do for you? He said, you can stop all the bribery money going into into Washington for me. It was a nice little deal. And what's Trump good at? Deals. He's the deal maker. He's written books on it. So he's gone around the world making these incredible deals, sorting out all the corruption, and the various countries have been trying to eat their way into America. So Saudi Arabia was trying to eat their way into America. China was, Russia was, Ukraine. I mean, loads of countries were, because basically America was up for sale. And Biden, that's coming out now in the news. All the deals that Biden did around the world, and all the money came back through his son. It's all coming out. So yeah.
So where are we going now, Mr. Trump? What's going to happen?
What's going to happen?
Okay, because I've started following him on Twitter.
Great stuff.
And some of his speeches, I love the one when he says, you dumb bastard.
Yes.
COVID. And I'm like, yay! So
he's a very straight talker. He's very straight. Some people don't like that, but I mean, he's a real straight talker, isn't he?
Yeah.
He doesn't mince his words. And when he says, we want to get rid of all this corrupt cabal, he uses the word corrupt cabal. He doesn't mince his words or anything. So he feels he's got them all. So he's basically, what he's saying is that he has, through the last 4 years, been watching all of the corrupt people and trying to remove him from being president. And of course, the only way they can do that is illegally, because Trump hasn't done anything wrong. He's done nothing wrong. So they have to. So all the corrupt people have been trying to make things up to get rid of him, and all his intelligence agencies, the NSA and everything, have been spying on all these people, gathering all the information to put them away, because he has to put them away legally.
Yeah.
So you have to build up evidence. So all that has been what's been happening over the last 4 years. So the next 4 years, he doesn't have to pander to the Republicans or the Democrats, because the first 4 years is always a tricky one, because you have to get certain things done, but at the same time you want to get re-elected. So it's always a sort of a compromise. You have to compromise yourself a bit because you want that re-election. So Trump has been compromising himself a bit to the right, because he needs the right vote, he needs the Christian vote to get himself re-elected. Once you've got re-elected, that second term then is all gloves off, basically. I mean, that's the same for any president. So for Trump, gloves off basically means he can now do whatever he needs to do to remove the cabal. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see how he does that.
So he's going to get in.
So he's going to be a landslide. And the reason we know that is because the polls are absolute lies. So if you want to get around the polls, how do we know he's going to get elected? Look at his rallies. His rallies are massive. People, thousands can't get in. He's having to, he has twice as many people outside as inside. He's hiring the biggest stadiums. Whereas if you look at the Democrats, we've got Biden who's stuck in his basement, who's afraid to come out. Why is he afraid to come out? Because if he comes out, he can barely fill a school. And then we had Kamala Harris, who was also trying to get crowds who wouldn't come to see her. So she actually went to a voting polling station and started, but that's illegal. She could actually be arrested for that. But nobody will come and listen to them. Nobody wants to know.
Yeah, but what woman or child wants to really see Biden just to be, treated in that way?
Yeah.
Do they?
No, that's right. So the rallies for Trump are huge, and the rallies for the others are completely non-existent. And then when you see the polls where it says Biden is 10 points ahead, that is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, that is just so ludicrous.
They were doing that about Brexit. They were saying about Brexit that the Remainers were ahead. It's the same psychological thing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's the reverse. So anything the Democrats say is usually the reverse. So when they say Biden's 10 points ahead, it probably means actually that Trump is 10 points ahead. Because, they do seem to work on a very simplistic level. And there is this thing about projection, which means you blame. And this is, they always describe this like the cookie jar. If you've got two brothers, basically, one of them's honest and is a good guy, and one of them's kind of like a bit naughty, and the naughty one wants to steal some cookies from the cookie jar. Cookies are gone. Parents come home. Oh, the cookies gone. So then you get the two brothers out. You say, where are the cookies? And of course the first thing that's going to happen is that the naughty boy is going to accuse the good boy of stealing the cookies. It's exactly what the Democrats do. So pretty much everything they're accusing Trump of doing is what they did.
Right.
It's called projection and deflection. So you project onto the opposition what you did yourself, and then also it deflects the attention away from yourself. So for instance, a really good example of that is how Trump was accused of collusion with Russia. Okay, so if we look at that projection and deflection, so what is the actual? Well, Trump was investigated. They spent millions investigating, couldn't find anything. The people who were looking were corrupt Democrats. So if they can't find anything, there isn't anything there. So what's the truth? The truth is actually that Biden was colluding with China and Ukraine. So if he was colluding with China and Ukraine, and then he says, oh, look, Trump's colluding with Russia, then you're moving everybody to look at Russia, not Ukraine and China. Don't want everybody looking at China and Ukraine because that exposes the Bidens. So that's what they did. They blamed Trump for Russia collusion straight away to try and deflect and project.
So when is the election? I know it's November.
3rd of November.
3rd of November.
Yeah.
So when he gets in, what's going to happen then?
Yeah, so when he gets in, so there'll be an election on the 3rd of November. It'll be a landslide, but there's this issue with the votes.
When you say landslide, what do you mean?
We're looking at, it's very hard to say, but I think
he's going to win without a doubt. Is what
he's going to win.
Oh, right, okay.
Sorry. In normal layman's terms, he's going to win massively.
Okay, all right. You hear that phrase, it's like never
landslide.
What it meant. Anyway.
Another term that often uses a red wave because the Republicans are red and the Democrats are blue. So we often talk about a red wave. So everybody's going to vote. All the mail-in ballots are going to take a while to be counted. What we don't know is will the red wave, the landslide, be so big that the ballots will become insignificant? If it's not quite as big as that, then it will take a few days for the ballots to be counted, and then
a few days.
It could be. In fact, they're talking now. California have allowed ballots to be. They're not actually going to start counting them, or counted them until like 20 days after the elections actually.
Really?
Yeah, because it's corrupt. The Democrats are so desperate.
Oh.
They're so desperate to get votes that they're creating all sorts of schemes to try and stretch this out and try and, you know.
What's their excuse for doing that then? 20 days.
To allow people, though, all those votes that are posted to get in because the mailing system's so dreadful. Yeah, that's their excuse. But there are court cases going on all over the country at the moment where the Democrats and Republicans are fighting over the mail-in ballots and how long they should be allowed to be. So every state is different. Every state is different. Some states are more Democrat, and the Democrat ones obviously are stretching the mail-in ballots for as long as they can. But hopefully we will know within 24 hours. The landslide will be so massive that the mail-in ballots will be insignificant, and actually there'll be a mixture. And what we're hearing actually at the moment is that a lot of the Republicans are voting in the early voting, which is a surprise because normally early voting is always Democrat. So it's already going towards the Republicans. So it's a landslide, and then Trump gets officially elected, or at least there's of the electoral rolls people, they vote on Trump on the 21st of December. And that's the moment when he's properly in. So if there's any doubt,
still going to have to wait.
We
like
might do. We might do. We don't know yet. But it's possible that we might have to wait till the 21st of December before we actually know 100%. Or it might be that it's very clear, but the Democrats argue. They might say Trump's cheated. They might say blah, blah, blah. It's all going to be projection, lots of projection of cheating, blah, blah, blah. So what's going to happen is that there are going to be riots, probably, because if Trump gets elected, Antifa and Black Lives Matter probably will be used to create chaos.
Right, who's Antifa? So
Antifa is an organisation that is supposed to be anti-fascist. It's against fascism. However, when you actually dig down and look into Antifa, the flag that they use is the same flag that the brown shirts used in Nazi Germany. So what you're looking at, again, is one of these mirror situations where the organisation is what it says it's fighting. Antifa is a fascist organisation because it's suppressing free speech, it's intimidating people, which is a fascist thing to do, and yet it says it's attacking fascism. So it's ridiculous. So they're a fascist organisation designed to destabilise. That's what they're there. That's what they're doing.
No, we've all heard about Black Lives Matter. How long have they been up and running for? Because obviously I never heard of them until all of this started.
The Black Lives Matter thing?
Yeah. Is that a long thing?
So they've been going quite a while. The interesting thing is, now here's another thing people can do, which I do, which is quite good fun. So if you go onto Google and then Google Trends.
Google Trends.
Google Trends. Go to Google Trends. It's a website, and what it shows is it shows you what people are searching for on Google. How many people are searching for things. So you go on Google Trends, and if you go onto Google Trends, type in BLM, Black Lives Matter, and then it'll show you by default 1 year.
Right. Okay.
Of Google searches of how many times BLM has been searched over 1 year.
Right.
And you'll see that there's a massive sort of spike around when BLM came, when all the trouble started around, when was it, July, August, all that kind of, there's a big spike. Everybody's searching it, trying to find out about it on Google. And you can see the number of searches go up. Now, what you then do is go to the settings where you can make the time frame longer and make it search back the last 5 years. And what you'll find is that there was a huge spike just before the 2016 election for BLM. So BLM caused problems, riots and various things just before the US election. That's when they do their thing. And the rest of the time they're completely silent. You don't hear about them.
No, I was going to say I haven't heard. So was that all planned?
So absolutely. Yeah. It's basically the Democrats feel that the blacks vote for them. That's what they're putting out. And they've been kind of educating people within schools and colleges that Democrats is the party for the blacks. Actually, it's not true, but they've been pushing it out there. So they've been relying on the black vote. So if you create black riots or you start causing a lot of rumpus around black issues and various things just before the election, then you're trying to stir up the feelings within the blacks to make sure the blacks vote for the Democrats.
Did he die?
Who?
What's his name? I feel not JFK.
No.
The policeman that put his knee on the guy.
Yeah.
Did he die? Was that planned?
I don't know. I think it was planned.
I think it was planned.
I think it was planned. It's possible planned, but there's so much misinformation out everywhere. So this is one of those things where we have to hold it in a box where it's possible. We don't know, but it's very likely, very, very likely. There are some very peculiar things around it, let's say. Yeah, although I'm a Q researcher and I'm a massive Trump supporter and huge fan of Q and everything, I am actually very, very cautious about what I believe and research it. And so there are things that even though I research them, I just can't know 100%.
No.
But Q, I'm completely 100% in Q. Because I researched it, and the Q proofs are absolutely 100% as far as I'm concerned. But that guy who died, George Floyd. George Floyd. Yeah, so him, yes, I mean, the guy was kneeling on his neck. Was it a dummy? There was rumours about whether it was a dummy or not, but then he's gurgling. And then there was a thing about him taking drugs, that he was actually on fentanyl or one of the drugs, and he died because of the drug overdose rather than the knee being stopping his throat and everything. There's a lot, isn't there? I suspect he was on drugs, and then the guy put his knee on his throat. Now, maybe the policeman was paid to be more rough with him, and then he died. And why all the cameras everywhere? I mean, normally there are cameras, but there were a lot.
There were a lot of
cameras videoing that one. It was like, there's a lot. Everybody was kind of like, this is always planned. So who knows? It's a bit suspicious, let's say.
I've seen a lot of video clips that's showing. Like the guy that was actually kneeling on his neck looks completely different to the guy that then they show in the what do they call it? You know, they go to the cells and they've got a photo.
Yeah.
You know? So what do you think about that?
Hard to say. Very, very hard to say.
And then showing different angles of George Floyd. One where he's got hair, and then on the other side he doesn't have any hair.
And then there's rumours about his coffin being too short, not long enough for his body. Yeah. And there's lots and lots of.
We just don't know.
You don't know. And you look at the videos of the coffin, though. You can see. You can go to the video, see the video of the coffin. You think, it does look a little bit short. So it's very, very weird. Where'd you go with it? It's weird. So I don't know. Anyway, I do know that Black Lives Matter spikes. The searches spike just before each US election. So they are it's used by the Democrats to create votes for them from the black community.
Yeah.
Only this time it isn't going to work because Biden is being exposed. And he's being exposed for the 3 strikes and you're out that he put in place in California, which put hundreds of thousands of blacks in jail. And it's it's gradually the blacks are waking up, and there's lots of really, really good high-profile blacks which are backing Trump. So and one of the first ones was the niece of goodness me, what's his name? Martin Luther King. The niece of Martin Luther King is a huge Trump supporter, massive Trump supporter. Yeah, and then there's all the things, like Trump he's been friends with Muhammad Ali for 35 years, Nobody called Trump racist before he got elected. Racism accusation only started when he got elected. He had a black girlfriend for a while. He won the Ellis Award for helping minorities, when he was creating his hotels and various things. There's so many things where he's actually working with blacks and everything. It's just complete. Yeah. The whole thing about him being racist is complete rubbish. Complete and utter rubbish. And yet the press pushed it and pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. Yeah. And of course they used that to stop Trump attacking corrupt Democrats who are black. They hid behind the "you are racist" smear.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a break, Howard. I'm laughing because my head's like, oh my God. I'll be listening to this show about 5 times and I'm going to be emailing you. What did you mean? No, that's brilliant. It's fascinating. Right, guys, we are going to take a 3-minute break so you can grab a quick drink, go and have a wee or something. Don't go away. And we will be back with part 2 with Howard Koolman. Hello and welcome back to the Shelley Tasker Show here on Cornwall Revolution Radio. Alongside myself are co-hosts Charlie Rainbow and Nina Eilertson, and our guest this evening, Howard Koolman. Welcome back, Howard.
Thank you very much.
If you would like to join in with chat or have any questions to ask, please click on the live chat room link on the top right-hand side of your screen, just below the player of your choice. Today's date is Wednesday the 20th of October 2020. Right, Howard.
So where were we?
Oh my God. Right.
Trump's being elected, isn't he?
Trump's being elected.
And it'll be a landslide.
It'll be a landslide.
Or a red wave, whatever you want to call it. And it may be a little bit confusing, but it will certainly be clear by the 21st of December. And then it's all gloves off. He doesn't have to pander to the right, to the Republicans. And he doesn't. The optics. There's a thing we often talk in Q about optics, that you have to do things in a certain way because you don't want to make it look bad. So, for instance, Trump doesn't want to say he knows about Q because that would turn off a lot of his support from people that are not into Q at the moment, not woken up to Q.
Scare them off.
So the optics, how it looks, is quite important for some things.
I have seen. I'm sure I saw an article there of him. Saying that about Q, he actually acknowledged them or something.
Well, he basically, his line on Q is that he doesn't know anything about them. He's heard about them. Trump often says one thing and says the opposite. So, but it's just a style of talking, really. So he says, and he says, he says that they are against paedophiles. That was the main thing, and he says, isn't that a good thing for the country? And so he bounces that back to the reporters because reporters don't know what to say to that. Because they don't want people thinking or researching about the paedophiles, VIP paedophile networks.
Which is massive.
Which is huge. So, and because we've had a little bit. So since Trump came to power, of course, we've had Epstein coming out. That was pretty major. Although there's still masses of information still to come out. So the governor of the US Virgin Islands has put out an indictment for all of the flight logs from all the helicopters and the aeroplanes to come out. And that's all going to be made public. So we don't know when that's going to be brought out. That will be brought out at some point. That's going to have a lot of famous people on those lists. And then a lot of people are going to have to answer to why they were on this helicopter. Where were they going?
Because it can't have been from the start, because even Trump was on there in 2003, wasn't he?
So Trump, as far as we know, we're not even sure if he's been to the island or not. He's not on any of the flight logs, or maybe he's on one of them.
Right.
But he's been photographed, obviously, with Epstein at parties, because, party scene was quite a scene, isn't it? Everybody hobnobs with everybody else. But there is a story where he found out that, I think somebody actually came up to him and said that Epstein was hitting on one of the nieces or one of somebody related to Trump, one of the girls, young girls, and Trump basically kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago and said never come back. And so that was the end of any kind of connection between Trump and Epstein. That was in 2005.
Well, right, okay.
And then when they started to investigate Epstein, the FBI investigators went to all the VIP people who knew Epstein, and nobody would say anything other than Trump. Trump was the only VIP person that they had who actually help them in any way. So that was kind of an interesting thing as well. So Trump generally is looking pretty clean on that whole front.
Yeah, I think he is. And he's stopped a load of paedophile rings already, hasn't he?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And then there's all the people that have been arrested. Like Epstein's been arrested on his watch. Lots of people have been arrested on his watch.
Yeah.
Trump signed so many executive orders, helping the agencies deal with paedophiles.
Who is protecting Epstein, though? I know we can't go too much into this, but we chatted about this the other day on the couch, and you said you think that he's still alive.
Yeah, so
who would be protecting him?
So I think he's in Guantanamo Bay, possibly. If he's going to be anywhere, he'll be in Guantanamo Bay. Otherwise, he is dead. But the problem we have is that the photograph of him being heart resuscitated by the agents when he was on the gurney being wheeled out is not him. It looks like him, but it isn't him. And we know this because his ears are different. And ears are a bit like fingerprints.
Right.
So everybody's ears are different. It's very hard. So you can have a body double, for instance, and lots of people have had body doubles. In fact, there's a very good film about Saddam Hussein's son, Uday, who had a body double, and they made a film about him. And yes, they do plastic surgery, but the plastic surgery never goes to the extent of being able to replicate the ears. So ears are really, really good. So if anybody says, "Oh, these are clone or ears," always check out the ears if the ears match
they
or
could
not.
just stick plasticine ears on.
In theory, that's it. But the ears were completely different for Epstein on the gurney. So that wasn't Epstein. So the question is, what happened to Epstein? He wasn't there, we don't know. Anyway, he's probably, I think, in Guantanamo Bay. And it will be the military who are looking after him, basically, in a cell. Very likely.
Because Trump made a tweet, didn't he, saying Epstein did not kill himself, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Well, the accusation is that he hung himself, which, again, the doctors have basically said that's impossible. But then it was like, he was murdered. Well, who was likely to have ordered the hit job on him? Well, it would have been the Clintons. So, and I think that's what the FBI knew. They knew the Clintons were going to organise a hit job on him because the Clintons loads of people have died mysteriously around the Clintons. There's about 90 at the moment, and it keeps on rising. So they knew, and they wanted to catch the Clintons. So I think they made it look like he was in his cell, so the Clintons would be drawn into trying to get him assassinated, and then they'd record the whole thing and work out what route they were using to knock people off, basically.
Okay.
So is he dead? He's not. Again, it's one of those things we don't know, but we're not sure. But maybe he's in Guantanamo, but it certainly wasn't him on the gurney. So interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, so where are we going next, Howard?
Yeah. So Trump gets elected. I think there's going to be, the Democrats are going to blame Trump or whatever for cheating, which it won't be. And then there'll be lots of investigation. There'll be stuff coming out. It will be obvious that it's not cheating. And then there will be riots, probably, from Antifa and Black Lives Matter and various other liberal groups, I think. At which point Trump may get the army in to actually create order, possibly. He hasn't done it. He hasn't brought in the army up until now. Even when all the Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots were going on, he didn't, because he knew that if the army were brought in, people were going to die, and then he'd be accused of their deaths. So he didn't. So he waited for the governors to ask him to go in, and then he didn't send the army, he sent marshals. So this time he might bring in the army to bring, if it happens. I mean, we don't even know how bad the riots are going to be. We also do know that a lot of the people that organise Black Lives Matter and Antifa have been under investigation and probably spied on for a long time. Those people will probably be rounded up, the people at the very top. So they might not be able to create as much havoc as they want to be able to, because that whole command structure is not there anymore because they've been arrested and taken in.
I was just thinking, what I was thinking earlier is, like you were saying, that he needs to get this election and then he'll deal with the kafala and everything. But he's had 4 years, so why can't he in the last year just deal with it now? Why does it always have to be after this? So
it has to be after the election, because you can't arrest your opponents just before an election, because then it looks pretty bad. It looks like you're trying to suppress the opposition.
Right.
So you can't do that. You have to leave it until after the election. After the election, he's won. They are not running for president or for various offices or whatever, because we're not only talking about the president. Obviously, we've got the Senate. There's lots of people in the Senate being elected. If there's a 100% landslide to the Republicans, the Senate will be 2/3 Republican and 1/3 Democrat, because not all the seats are up for election at this particular year. So that's the best it can be for the Senate. And for the House, I think everything is up for election. So he could end up with 95% of the House seats. And then the House gets flipped from being Democrat to Republican. And then laws can start to be created and stuff to sort out all the mess that the Democrats. And then hopefully some of the Democrat governors are removed as well. And then that mess. There's so much corruption. There's so much corruption in America. It is going to take years for it all to come out. I mean, there's we've got HS2, which is a bit of a nasty thing going on at the moment.
HS2 is?
HS2 is the railway line going up from London up to Leeds, isn't it? And high-speed rail, the high-speed rail link going through Birmingham up there. So there's a lot of talk about money being wasted. There's an exact equivalent of this happening in California, where billions has been allocated to it, and the money has just kind of disappeared. Nobody quite knows where it's all gone. So there's lots and lots of corruption at all various state level. Anyway, so Trump's removed a lot of the top people who are corrupt in the FBI. There's probably about 30 of them. Comey's a name. Strzok, you're going to hear about all these names, by the way. Spygate. So if you go onto Yahoo and do a search for Spygate or Obamagate even, you will find lots of information about the spying that was done on Trump and the FBI people that are involved in it and all the rest of it. And there are YouTube videos. Now, also to help people do research, because it's very hard to find the information, so there's good little places. So I told you about Yahoo. Another really good place to, if you want to search for a YouTube video, don't search for it within YouTube. If you search for it within Yahoo, you'll find the video on YouTube very easily. But if you search for it within Yahoo, Yahoo is suppressing it, so they won't show you the video.
YouTube, you mean?
YouTube, sorry, YouTube, yeah. So if you search Pizzagate, for instance, on the Pizzagate Primer, which is like the premiere Pizzagate video, if you do that in Yahoo, you won't find it. It'll be way, way down search results. You won't find it. But if you do it in Yahoo, then you'll find it immediately. It'll be top.
So how many gates we got? We've got Obamagate, Billgate, Willgate.
Yes, Obamagate, Spygate, Pizzagate. There's lots of gates.
And Pizzagate will be shut down, I'm presuming.
Well, Pizzagate, don't forget, is the collective of all the VIP paedophiles. So at some point they are going to be arrested, and it's going to be a massive operation. I don't know how they're going to do it, but we're talking hundreds and hundreds of VIPs. And also then we're talking also pedowood, Hollywood.
Yeah.
Hollywood at some point has got to be taken down completely. All the A-listers and the B-listers. I mean, it's just the number of people that are involved in it is absolutely beyond people's imagining. Beyond people's imagining. There is already actually a new Hollywood that's been set up by clean people who hate the paedophiles and hate all the establishment Hollywood, and they're already setting up a parallel movie industry in parallel. And then so I mean this is why I think the whole thing is so fascinating, because it's just such a massive undertaking. How are they going to do it? And yet they're going to do it. We know they're going to do it. So, yeah.
Do we 100% know?
Absolutely, absolutely. The sealed indictments are sitting on demand. They're not going away. And then people are going to have to. The block at the moment is the media. So the media don't want to talk about it. The media won't talk about the 180,000 sealed indictments. They don't want to mention it. But the media are being exposed at the moment for the liars that they are. CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC. There's talk about them possibly flipping and actually starting to work for the good guys, possibly, but I don't. CNN will definitely die.
Yeah, but even though a lot of this is coming out to be like that, why is it then? Because you've got all these blue pill people that are just not waking up, even though it's right in front of them. Yeah. What is your kind of view on the blue pill people seeing it right in front of you and still kind of burying their heads in sand?
So it's kind of what's happening at the very moment, actually. At the moment, we've got Biden corruption being pushed up. So Giuliani is releasing information. In fact, China released a sex tape video of Hunter Biden and saying that basically Hunter Biden was being blackmailed, as well as they were feeding him money too. So this information is coming out, but the news media, MSNBC and CNN, are not saying anything about this at all. But people are finding out about it, finding that the news, and then doing their searches on Google and then going elsewhere. So people are finding, and then they're seeing, oh my God, why aren't the news talking about this? So people are starting to find out that the news media are trying to suppress everything. That is only going to accelerate, and eventually they will die. They will die.
Because a lot of the stuff I put out, a lot of the blue people don't accept. But the one thing that I found a lot of them were accepting was the pedo stuff, because I think it's because they got kids, and it's kind of like I think that stuff people were on my timeline, they were questioning it.
And when various bits of information come out and it's just too huge to suppress, basically. I mean, when all the flight logs come out with all the helicopters and everything for Epstein, when that comes out, that's going to send shockwaves around Hollywood and the music industry. And then they won't be able to suppress that. And also that'll start implicating people in other countries too, because this thing is global. Q said this is a global thing. And it starts with America, but then the shockwaves are going to shock and ripple around the world, basically.
So do you think that the dam is cracked at the moment, and then there's going to be like an explosion of the water, and it's just going to go out?
I think so, yeah, and I think that's what the next 4 years is about. But we have to get past the elections. So the elections are the first thing that has to be got rid of, not got rid of, but has to be got through. And what Trump has to show is he has to show that he has the backing of the majority of a massive majority of the people of the US. Once everybody can see that it's a landslide, then the media are then all the polls are then exposed. And everybody knows that the majority are behind Trump, and then Trump can do what he wants, basically. And then he knows, he can say, well, the people supported me, and they know what I'm here to do, drain the swamp, and I'm going to drain the swamp. And so he's going to pull out all the Scots. So there's already little tidbits coming out which are starting to implicate people in the UK. One thing I should say, when Trump got inaugurated, 3 days later, I think it was around 3 days later, the head of GCHQ resigned. And a document was leaked onto the internet which showed that the UK government were spying through GCHQ. They were spying on the Trump campaign. So there are connections. So basically the Democrats asked the UK government to spy on Trump. Is that legal? It's very, very dodgy. Same thing Australia too. So people are going to start, and then we've also, the Chinese are now saying that not only was Hunter Biden got dealings with China and receiving money for them, but David Cameron was doing a similar thing, and possibly other politicians. So I think once the flood of information starts coming out, it's going to affect everybody. I mean, there's nobody that's not going to be affected by it.
What I've noticed with the whole COVID thing is there's so much information out there showing that there's corruption going on, that people still don't accept it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that's, I mean, that's going to take a while to unpack, but unpack it will. And that's going to be global. That's going to destroy the big pharma. Big pharma are going to die. And they're going to die. In fact, a lot of these places are going to die through what's called class action lawsuits. So when, for instance, somebody's mother died because somebody wasn't able to see them, and it's shown that our human rights were abused and we lost our jobs, our income, what's going to happen is all those people, thousands, tens of thousands, are all going to club together into one class action lawsuit, and there'll be a number of top lawyers who will take it on as a group and then prosecute the government, the scientific advisors, and all the information will come out through the court process. It's going to be devastating. It will bring down, all the scientific advisors are going to be brought down around the world, not just in the UK and the US, but globally. And and the links between them and Big Pharma are going to be shown up, how corrupt Big Pharma has been controlling the World Health Organization. And everything ties back to Bill Gates, China, and Big Pharma. It's going to be like firing guns everywhere with these class action lawsuits, and it's going to bankrupt the big corporations.
How do you know it's going to be all these class action lawsuits?
They've already started. So the people that took on Volkswagen, for instance, that was a massive class action lawsuit because they were cheating with their emissions, weren't they? With their working out their miles per gallon and everything. That was the biggest corporation in Germany. And there was a class action lawsuit against them. Those lawyers that took on that are now taking on the COVID thing.
Should we see if we've got
already started. It's already started.
Just in case.
Yeah. So anyway. Oh yeah, questions. Yeah, so the class action lawsuits are going to be quite devastating, and they will also bring down the mainstream media, because the mainstream media are complicit in hiding the information and putting out false information.
We've got a question.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, questions are good.
From Steve Kerno, and it is, why is Trump not stopping the COVID hoax in its tracks? They seem to be doing a lot of testing there. Does he support the narrative?
Right, so Trump so it's very interesting, isn't it? So the virus is created in China. If Trump had said right from the beginning, there's China trying to destroy us through a virus, if Trump had said that right at the beginning, who'd have believed him? It's like, hardly anybody believed him. If he said that the virus was going to be released all around the world and that the whole world was going to go into lockdown, who would have believed him? It's like, nobody. I mean, nobody would have believed global lockdown was going to happen. So we had this thing, and I don't know who said it, whether Q said it or Trump said it or somebody else, but there's this little phrase which I go back to a lot, which is that you can't tell people the truth. You have to show them. Yeah. The truth is so mind-bogglingly massive and huge and kind of bizarre that people wouldn't believe it. So you have to allow it. You have to allow these amazingly bizarre things to happen, and then people will say, "Oh my God." So we believe Trump is allowing the pandemic to happen to a degree. He's been playing along with it. He's been having his scientific advisors up who are corrupt. He knows they're corrupt, Fauci and Birx. And he's been doing the best he can to protect everybody, but he's been allowing the whole thing to play itself out so people can see what they were trying to do. And he's allowed various states. So he's done a very interesting thing, and this is another pattern of Trump's, is that he's devolving power to the regions. He's trying to reduce power, the federal power government, shrinking the federal government, and then giving responsibility to the individual states. So, for instance, he allowed the individual states to come out of lockdown as they saw fit, which meant that they were competing with each other, which is a brilliant move. It means that the states that were holding on to lockdown because they actually wanted to destroy the US economy, so Trump had less like chance of win based on the economy, people could see, why are the Democrat states locking down and actually everybody else is unlocking? And then people are going to go, oh goodness, or maybe the corrupt Democrat governors are corrupt. Maybe they're actually trying to break the US economy deliberately to try and make Trump look bad. So it's a brilliant move of creating competition within the states to expose corruption. So
that hasn't always happened then. States having their own powers.
No, that's right. And that's the move as well. So the move globally from the last 10, 20 years has been to concentrate power. So we've had that within the United Nations. The United Nations taking more responsibility and powers. The World Health Organization controls the health of departments, whatever, from countries all around the world. So if the World Health Organization says you need to lock down, all the departments around the world go, WHO has told us to lock down, we're all locking down. So there's no separation. There's a single point of power. And if that gets corrupted, then the whole lot is corrupted. And this is the real beauty of competition. Competition is so important to stop corruption taking over completely. If you have a single entity which is at the very top of humanity and the whole planet, if that gets corrupted, we are buggered. And that's what's happened. WHO got corrupted. UN is pretty pathetic and hopeless. So you want competition. Power needs to be devolved down to the regions, and that's what Trump's doing.
Trump is a puppet. There is no political solution.
Trump is a puppet, right? Well, I agree with you. He is a puppet. He's a puppet, though, for the US military, who are wanting to remove all the corruption around the planet. So he's a good puppet. There are good puppets. There are bad puppets. And he's you could say, okay, a puppet is nothing is ever black and white. So everybody has a certain amount of freedom, a certain amount of, and also then they also answer to somebody above them as well. I would say Trump is is tiny bit puppet, but mostly independent. He's actually a very, very brilliant guy. And this is another thing that's been completely put out in the press that he isn't. He's very, very brilliant. He wrote a book on negotiating, which is a bestseller. He created The Apprentice. Yes, he did inherit money, but he's actually he multiplied it by 10 times with the investments and stuff that he did. He's a very, very clever guy.
Is it true that his daughter, is it Ivanka or Ivana?
Ivanka Trump, yeah.
Is it true that she's married to a guy who works in the vaccine industry?
There's a lot of very peculiar connections. Yes, there are various tricky little things. And you think, oh, and did Trump have loans? There's a loan thing, has he got loans? He got money that he's borrowed from a bank in Russia, and he's got a bank in China, blah blah blah. Well, he's a businessman, and all businessmen, they have their assets are far bigger than their loans, and that's just the way that businesses work. So that's
What about son-in-law?
But the son-in-law, yes, I don't know. But what we do know is he's exposing paedophilia. All the paedophiles are being exposed. He's also, what he's done, he did the TTIP, as I mentioned earlier, and the partnership thing. The other thing that's often misunderstood is the wall between Mexico and the US. That wall has had many benefits, actually. Firstly, it's stopped the child trafficking, the drug trafficking coming over into the US. But when you do that, you actually cut off the money supply to the Mexican drugs cartels. Now, that's really good. If you cut off the money to the drugs cartels, you weaken them. Yeah. And then there's a possibility that Mexico could free itself from all that drug and child trafficking corruption, which could be huge. And I think Mexico wanted the wall just as much as the US to try and break the drug cartel's hold on Mexico.
I've heard from a few people that Mexico is actually the place to be at the moment. Cause, like a lot of people that want to find somewhere that isn't affected by all this regulations and So that's a bit of a
that's right, absolutely, that's right. And of course, on the border, the border then becomes safe on the Mexican side and on the US side, because the drugs cartels then aren't constantly there trying to hoover up children and kind of put them across the border. So it's a win-win.
Is Mexico not as evil as we are made? Is Mexico not as evil as it's made out to be? Then, if people are actually going there at the moment,
I think it's improving. It's improving.
Communities are building there and stuff.
It's an improving situation. Yeah. So
how is Trump? How is Trump exposing paedophilia at the moment?
So he put various people in place within the top of the Department of Justice and within the FBI to focus on the child trafficking issues, and he put a lot of money behind it in his executive orders, which all presidents produce. There's been a number of executive orders specifically to make certain departments within the Department of Justice focus purely on paedophiles and kind of start tracking them down and exposing them.
Then?
Sorry?
Is there any proof about that?
The proof is on the number of people that have been arrested.
Right.
And there have been more paedophiles arrested under Trump's presidency than anybody else. So
are they the big,
But these are lower
end.
Right, these are lower end. So obviously we've got Epstein.
Yeah.
Now the question is, would Epstein have ever been arrested if Clinton had become president? I would absolutely say absolutely not. There's no chance. So Trump was absolutely instrumental in Epstein being outed and exposed. There was something I was going to say about the wall as well. And the other thing that often is misreported is the cages, the children in cages. So the cages were actually put there under Obama's administration. Obama had the cages put in, and so Trump inherited that. Now, of course, when all the migrants and everything were coming up trying to get in, of course, it put a huge pressure on the immigration system down there, and so they were trying to sort out, whose children were they, and they were actually trying to do what they never did before, they're actually trying to find out who's doing trafficked. Trafficking was not really looked at when the Obama administration. So Trump says, let's look at the trafficking. So what do they do? So, okay, we've got to find out who are real parents and who are not. So they start doing DNA tests on the children and the adults coming in. They find out they're not the parents. So then what do you do with the child? You've got a child that's come in, there's no parent, so you have to put the child into a cage, which Obama created, and then you have to try and sort out who are the parents of this child. Meanwhile, the parents that came in, they're obviously child traffickers. What do you do with them? So it's a bit of a nightmare, but the whole thing has been misreported and obviously spun by the media, which is simply a propaganda machine for the Democrats.
Could Trump not have just got rid of the cages, though?
But then what do? Do you have rooms? But the trouble is you have bullying, you see, and you want to be able to see if there's bullying happening within the with the children and stuff, and make sure they're not self-harming. And
so there must be a better way to putting kids in
I know,
cages,
you would have thought so, wouldn't you? And then you're talking about resources. I think you'd have to spend a lot of money, and then
it was just a system that was already in place, basically.
It's a nightmare, and we're talking tens of thousands and thousands. It's massive scale. People don't realise the scale of the problem. So anyway, I think the legal immigration, because Trump is absolutely fine with legal immigration. The people that apply and they want to come in, there's no problem with that.
Yeah.
The problem is with people trying to jump across the border illegally. That's what Trump's got his beef with. And that has been reduced by 92%, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And of course, that's also people that then won't be causing crime, because a lot of these people that get in illegally actually end up being criminals, and then they bust them out of the country once they get prosecuted, and then they just come straight back in again. So
yeah.
Okay. Right. Right. There we are. Okay. Well, just to say we've got like 25 minutes left. Where do you want to go, Howard?
Right. Where should we go? So let's have a look and see what's going on. So yes, we've got. So Trump's gloves are coming off. We have the Spygate, which is going to be brought out into the domain, public domain. So we are going to be looking at the arrest at some point of the Clintons for all of the money. The Clinton Foundation. The Clinton Foundation is absolutely rife with financial skullduggery. They took loads and loads of donations, and they hardly gave any of it to Haiti. So where did that money go? We're talking tens of millions, and they have billions. And where did that money that went in? Where did it come from? I mean, it's just massive. They actually took 2 planes, and they took all the paperwork out of the Clinton Foundation. Took them 2 aeroplane fulls of documentation 2 years ago, and they've been investigating it all that time. At some point, all these investigations, so the Clinton Foundation is going to be investigated. Durham is investigating all of the spying that was going on, illegal spying and everything that was done on Trump. And that's huge. That's going to lots of FBI, CIA people. All these investigations are going to come and finish. And what are they going to do? Those sealed indictments are going to be opened, and people are going to be arrested and face charges. And it's just going to be, once this process starts of the sealed indictments being opened, it is going to be continuous for years. And I don't think people realise how people are going to be sick of it after a while. We'll be looking at hundreds of people being arrested every month, and it's going to go on for years.
Hopefully.
And because it's such a large number of people, to deal with the load, that we're looking at a lot of people being prosecuted through the military courts, because the military courts are faster, and a lot of the crimes are classed as treason. So if you try to overthrow the president illegally, that's treason. The sentence for treason is death. It's death. Yeah. Which makes you really appreciates why the Democrats are so terrified, because they have been trying to unseat Trump illegally for 4 years. All of those people that are involved in that are going to be tried in the military courts for treason, and their sentence will be death. And A.G. Barr, who's the top attorney for the government, he has recently reinstated the federal death penalty. And this is only going in one direction. Yeah. We are going to look at a lot of people, And the CIA and Trump wants to do what JFK failed to do. He wants to break up and destroy the CIA. And that CIA is going to be done at some point. All of the functions within the CIA are going to be taken out, looked at with a fine-tooth comb, and then they're going to be moved to the military or to the FBI or to other departments. And then eventually there'll be nothing left in the CIA at all, and the CIA will be written off.
Why do you think Trump is still alive? Because he's had many attempts on his life.
Yeah.
What do you think is happening this time that JFK couldn't avoid last time?
Yeah. So JFK and Trump are trying to do the same thing. Basically, they're trying to take out the CIA and all the corruption and everything. They're doing the same thing. Basically, John F. Kennedy didn't appreciate how the CIA had infiltrated his own security detail. And Trump obviously has the benefit of hindsight on that. And when he was thinking of running for office. In fact, the US military said, we would like you to run for office. And the military said, we will protect you, not the CIA. And we will use the National Security Agency's database to make sure that no corrupt agents get near you. So Trump is protected by the military, not by Secret Service.
So in a funny way, JFK did something good because in hindsight, you had all that facts of how to avoid all of that, and that probably helped Trump in the end, right?
Yes, that's right, yeah. Interesting. There's so many little stories we could go into, but one of the other little things that popped up was, why is Trump always orange? Why is Trump orange? Well, how do you get orange? You get orange if you're under a UV lamp. That generally is how people get orange, isn't it? It's a tan. What does UV do? UV destroys viruses. Isn't it interesting? So Trump there is orange all the time. Maybe he's actually having cleaned off all the viruses off him every day because there's threats of virus attack on Trump all the time. So he's been cleaned off through UV all the time. That's why he's orange.
Or he might just like looking tanned.
Or he might just look tan. Which I kind of doubt. I kind of doubt that. But yeah.
And the future is bright. The future is orange.
And the future is orange.
That
That's right.
just
Yes.
says that Trump's going to win.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Sorry, I had to get that one in.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to look at lots of arrests, and I'm thinking, and again, we can only go by feel because we don't know. Q is not going to tell us when the whole thing is going to start because that would give ammunition to the enemy. They could then prepare for this because this is war basically between intelligence agencies and various things. So Q's not going to tell us when it's going to start. But Q will drop hints, and then when it does start, we'll be able to look back and see, Q said it started then.
One thing I have seen a lot.
January. I think it's going to start in January.
Okay. And one thing I have seen a lot on from Q followers is, these people have all been executed already, and these people are in Guantanamo, and what's all that
Hopium. I think a lot of them, they all get so excited by the Q phenomenon, and there's all this thing, we know they're corrupt, and I think they just get so excited, and then somebody starts a rumour, and people love the rumour. Think, he's gone, and then they start spreading it around. It's Chinese whispers.
Yeah,
it's just a pain in the arse.
Can they?
I just get so frustrated with it. I mean, we just don't know. We don't know. Have all these these A-listers in Hollywood already been arrested? I doubt it, but I don't
So that never came from Q. That was just their followers.
Q has never said that. So you really have to separate what Q has said from what the Q researchers have said, and then the Q researchers, there's good ones and there's bad ones, and then you have to watch it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
The researchers. Basically.
So I don't know where to go from there really. So we're into obviously awesome times, scary times as well.
Yeah.
You reckon from January this is all?
I think from January we're going to start seeing arrests. I think Durham, and people want to look for stuff in the news, and a very, very good place to look is the Gateway Pundit. Is putting out a lot of really good stuff at the moment, Gateway Pundit. And the other place that's putting out a lot of good stuff at the moment is the New York Post. Those seem to be two news outlets, and Breitbart. 3 news outlets that are not being censored. They are putting the stuff out there. So yes, those three are really, really good.
Can you just say those again?
So the Gateway Pundit, Breitbart, and the New York Post. The New York Post was censored by Twitter recently for putting out a piece on Biden. When somebody gets censored, that's a good sign that there's some truth in there and that people should start reading about it. So
there's lots of censorship going on at the moment, isn't there?
Yeah.
Are you stockpiling food or anything at the moment? No. You're not worried about that?
I'm not worried, actually. I think everything's going to be fine because we're at the point now where the arrests are going to begin, and when the arrests start, their whole empire is going to start collapsing, and then we are going to be freed. We're going to be freed. It's going to be 4 years, so Trump's going to be in for another 4 years yet. And in fact, technically, he could be in for 8 years, because when you're impeached and the impeachment fails, your 4 years don't count. You could run for another 4 years. So Trump could be in for 8 years if he wanted to. I don't think he isn't going to be, but if he wanted to, he could.
So how is that going to affect us over here then?
So over here, what's going to happen is the Epstein thing is basically bubbling in the background. When things go quiet, it used to be that things were being suppressed, but that isn't happening anymore. When things go quiet now, it means that there is a lot of detective work going on under the surface, and it's going quiet, and then it will all come out. So Epstein is going to be huge. That will bring down so many people in the government. Massive.
Over here as well?
Yes. There's a massive VIP paedophile ring in Westminster. And I mean, we could talk about names. I don't really want to go about names, but I mean, there's a lot of people in Westminster. Yeah. And
name away, mother.
And they are all going to be connected in with Hollywood and various. In fact, of course, we've got Harry, haven't we, over there in Hollywood?
Yeah.
He stayed at a paedophile's mansion in Canada when he first left the.
Really?
Yeah, and then he went to Hollywood, which is rife with paedophilia.
What? Harry.
Prince Harry. Yeah, Prince Harry.
What, he's now gone to Hollywood.
They're all paedophiles.
And he's backing Biden, who's also a paedophile. So Harry is looking really, really not good at all. Harry, I think, is mixed up with the paedophile lot. And then we've also got, if we're going to talk names, then we've got Prince Charles. Again, read Diana's book, the one she wrote before she died. She said Prince Charles recommended that Jimmy Savile be their marriage guidance counsellor.
Oh my God!
So Prince Charles is absolutely in it up to his teeth. And then you've got all the people that are connected. You know, you've got Rolf Harris, you've got K-Pax Chat, the actor, Kevin Spacey, all connected. So and that's just in the royal family. And then you go down, you've also got the leader of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer. He was the head of the CPS, the Criminal Prosecution Service, burying the Jimmy Savile stuff.
Yeah.
I've heard that.
Yeah, when people were coming through, the police actually filed a report with witness statements, and Keir Starmer was the head of the CPS, and nothing happened to him.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer is highly implicated in all this. As is, and there's also question marks about Jeremy Corbyn, who won't talk about the Islington home with abusing boys. He won't talk about it, silent. What's that about? There are lots, and then and it's on both sides of the party. I mean, Conservatives are just as bad. So there is a massive paedophile ring within Westminster on both sides of Parliament, and they all need to be brought down, and they will be. And it's going to be Epstein that's going to be the trigger. Once Trump pulls the trigger, all timing is down to Trump. Trump decides when it's time to pull the trigger on these things. And he's got a lot of these things hold back because everything has to happen in the right order. Timing and the order is very important. Like a chess game. You don't just take pieces. You take the piece, but at the right moment, and then it's the right time, and then everything can. So it's a massive chess game that's happening at the moment.
Now, slightly different questions.
Yes.
Slightly different. We're going down the royal family route. There's been a lot of talk about the Queen with the gate and the thing off the gate and not wearing her crown thing and stuff like that, and that she may be not at the palace and stuff like that. Yeah. What's your view on what you believe is happening with the Queen at the moment?
The Queen is it's a really difficult one, isn't it? Trump visited the Queen 3 times, which is unheard of for a president. And on the last occasion, him and the Queen seem to be getting on quite well. So my feeling, and this is just a feeling, I've nothing to put this on at all.
He's kidnapped her, isn't he?
Is that she has flipped. And she is basically going to end the royal family. I think the royal family are going to come to an end.
Oh.
And she's washing her hands of it, I think. Her kids are all... What's that?
What makes you think that?
Because of the way Trump and the Queen got on so well.
Oh.
We know Trump is actually removing all the paedophiles. We know he's doing that. He's done executive orders and more people have been outed, Epstein and everything. There's no question Trump is fighting to remove all the paedophiles which are infesting the Democrat Party. He's removing them all.
And has he removed any that are actually in these political positions?
In political positions.
Or just the low ones that you were talking about earlier?
At the moment, it's just Epstein and Maxwell and also Keith Renier from the Nexium cult.
Right.
Those 2 are the big ones that have gone down so far. And there are loads which are periphery, which were feeding. So Epstein was given money by Wexner. Wexner funded Epstein. Epstein never made any money. He was given his money by... There's lots of these billionaires who are sitting in the backgrounds, who are also paedophiles. When the Epstein thing finally breaks, when it all comes out, all the investigations that have been going on for the FBI, the biggest criminal investigation in US history, when that stuff and the sealed indictments start getting unsealed, it's going to be carnage for the paedophiles, and it's going to come down like dominoes all around the world.
Is there going to be a big financial crash?
Yes. Well, sort of. So gold is being moved about. And what we think is going to happen is that all the currencies around the world are going to be put on gold-backed currencies. All the currencies are going to be gold-backed, which means that all the central banks are going to be nationalised because they're all private at the moment, and they're all controlled by the Rothschild banking family and various other interested parties. All those central banks will be nationalised. All the currencies will be put back on gold. Gold is going to have to go up massively to back all the currencies. And then all the national debts will be wiped completely.
They will be wiped.
Everything's going to be wiped. All the national debts.
But are we going to pay for that? If we go down the darker side of the New World Order that they want?
Nobody's going to go down the darker side of the New World Order. New World Order is over. Globalism is over. It's finished. It's completely finished. And nobody's going to go down that road. Yeah, all the countries are going to be cleaned out.
I'm really worried about
the NSA, the National Security Agency, have the dirt on every leader on the planet. They only have to go to the leader and say, we're going to expose you next, and the leader's going to have to either resign or anything, because the NSA have everything on everybody.
So if all the debt's wiped, are we going to live in harmony?
So Trump has already ended all the wars. All the wars are already ending. Peace with North Korea. Russia's friends with Trump, and Trump's created a nice, good relationship there. China's still a little bit iffy at the moment, so there's a lot of stuff to come out there, but ISIS has been defeated. Russia are looking after Syria, going to rebuild Syria. And then there's peace deals between the United Arab Emirates and Sudan, and all these countries that have been fighting for years are all starting to make peace deals because of Trump.
Brilliant.
Trump is the first president ever that hasn't started a war but has actually ended almost all of them.
Okay, we've got about 8 minutes left, Howard. What can you squeeze in 8 minutes?
What shall we
haven't
talk about?
Touched on about everything that you wanted to say.
Yeah. So we said the banking system is going to be completely reformed. Completely reformed. But before you can put all the currencies back on gold, the reason for putting the currencies back on gold is partly also to stop banks printing money. When banks print money, all our money gets devalued. Yeah. So if you do gold backed, it means all the money that we have retains its value, but it means that the governments can't print money anymore. And governments print money basically to deal with trade deficits. When you've got, like for instance, the relationship between China and America was that China made everything and America bought it all. But that creates a huge imbalance. And America has to print money to buy all of China's stuff. That can no longer happen if you're on gold. So what has to happen is that all the trade between all the different countries has to be balanced. And that's what Trump's been doing. He's been running around the world, renegotiating trade deals to balance the exports and the imports. All the countries are doing this at the moment, but it's not actually being talked about. All the countries are balancing their exports and imports, or trying to, or thinking about it. When they're all balanced, then you can go on gold, and then the governments don't need to print money, or they can't because they're on gold. That's what's going to happen. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he does it. Now, Trump is the expert on bankruptcy. He's done it lots of times before with his own business and with other businesses. He knows bankruptcy very well. So isn't it amazing that he's in charge, and then he's going to help the whole world go bankrupt, and everybody's going to be fine. Buy some gold.
Buy some gold. Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, my dad's bought a load of gold.
Yeah. So that's one of the things. So we've got the financial system is going to be completely reformed in the next 4 years. There's a lot of things that are going to happen in the next 4 years, and that will cut off the head of the Rothschild banking family, which have been in charge since the 1800s. Research the 5 brothers of the Rothschilds who became the heads of the central banks in Europe in the 1800s. That's how the Rothschilds started their empire, and they made money from wars, and they've been creating wars and making money from wars ever since. Napoleonic wars, funded by the Rothschilds, made a fortune, and they've been doing the same ever since. The wars are created by the banks. If the Rothschilds are out of the picture, there's no need for wars. Nobody wants wars. It's not good for business. Leaders don't want it. People don't want it. Ain't going to happen. So all that's coming to an end. All the wars are coming to an end. The paedophiles and the blackmail and paedophilia go together. So if you want to control a politician, you basically get them into a party. If they're willing to have sex with a child, great, and video them, and you've got them blackmailed. If they're not willing to have sex with a child, then you basically drug them. and then you get the child out and ask the child to have sex with them while they're drugged, and then you video them and you've got them blackmailed. One way or another, you can blackmail a guy and make it look like paedophilia. Thousands. And that's what Epstein did. He was a machine, a massive machine creating blackmail and this whole thing on his island and various other islands. And apparently he's only one of 50 people doing this around the world. All the paedophilia needs to be sorted out and the blackmail needs to be sorted out. Once you remove the blackmail, the leaders will then be free to do what they want to do, not what they're being forced to do by their blackmailers. So, and the FBI and CIA are getting lots of people confessing and coming in, and we're being told, and building this mesh of database of who's being blackmailed and who's doing the blackmailing, what they've done, blah, blah, blah. So they're building up this huge information resource, and then the whole thing is going to be unwound.
Is this going to be unwound as well then with COVID?
Yeah, so COVID at the moment, the reason COVID came in at the time it did was for several reasons. First of all, they wanted to get rid of Trump because they know Trump's going to remove all the paedophiles and the blackmail and change the banking system, and they had to bring him down. So the COVID was there to create the excuse for lockdown to crush the US economy, and therefore and basically to get him unelected, to make sure that Biden gets elected. So that isn't working. Economy's doing well, and then he's going to have a landslide. So COVID was partly brought in to get rid of Trump, but it was also brought in to continue the push for the New World Order and to make people compliant to having masks and doing what they're told.
When do you see that ending over here?
Yeah, so I think all of that is going to be unwound in 2021, I think. There's so much evidence now. I think there's already prosecutions now against the UK government for the lockdown. I think it's going to be fairly quick. I think I wouldn't be surprised if COVID actually fizzles out halfway through the winter.
Right. Do you believe COVID does exist then?
I think it's a variant of the flu.
Yeah, I do as well.
I think it's a variant of the flu, and it's not. Obviously, it's not very bad. I mean, I have had it. I had it in the very beginning of January. I had a very sore throat. Oh, my God, I thought my throat was being ripped to shreds. It was very, very painful, and I was ill for a week, and I was quite tired and everything, and then I was fine. Lots of other people, yes, the illness, it's not a nice flu. It's horrible flu, and a lot of people have really suffered from it, but it doesn't kill you. The big spike of deaths over April, May, I believe that those deaths were caused by lockdown and the delays of operations and various other things. I don't think. And then the test is just ridiculous. The test is so many false positives, and then they give it a name. So let's just give every flu a name every year. Why don't we? So it's ridiculous. It's all a bit of fabrication. Yeah.
How do you reckon it was in the making for this?
Well, good question.
For the New World Order thing?
Yeah, probably a good few years, 5 years, 6 years. Yeah.
Some people think it's from the 70s, don't they?
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, no, 70 years, sorry.
70 years.
70 years,
yeah.
right.
70 years,
Yeah. Well, we think Fauci was involved in creating it, don't we? Because there is rumours that he funneled money. His research was brought down, wasn't it? And then he got the research moved to China, to Wuhan.
So do you reckon it's actually released from a lab, or just a general flu that's going around anyway?
I think it was released from the lab. Yeah, I think so.
There's evidence that Fauci paid the Wuhan lab to get coronavirus from an animal to.
Yeah, I've seen all that, but I'm just thinking, if these people wanted something to be released, they'll be just as much as risk.
Absolutely,
so
which is why it could never.
That, really.
That's right, which is why it could never be that deadly. They wouldn't release something that was like Ebola in a respiratory contracted, because it would kill all their bad guys, and they don't want their bad guys to to die. So so it had to be fairly bad, but not bad enough that they.
Right. Well, we're going to have to round up there, Howard.
Yeah. We will have to do this again, because there's still so much more to talk about.
There's still so much. Yes, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
My pleasure. It's great.
Are you coming to London next time? Because I like sitting next to you on the bus and having our chat.
I have to see what money. Yeah, I'll see how.
I come back and I'm like, look at this stuff with Howard and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Anyway, there isn't much news actually of what's going on at the moment. There is a protest in Truro in 2 weeks' time. Oh, it's bad, isn't it? I think it's the 14th of November. Anyway, it's on Saturday. It is in 2 weeks' time.
What location this time?
Outside the cathedral again. We are aiming to do another coach trip the end of November again.
28th.
28th, yeah. So anybody that wants to get involved, please message me. And that's about it, really. We're just going to round up with our usual song. Where are we going? Which one? Exactly, which verse? I think we are the 99%.
Yeah.
Leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You shove your circuit breaker up your ass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You can shove your circuit breaker up your ass.
Yeehaw!
You can shove your circuit breaker up your ass. You can shove your circuit breaker. Shove your circuit breaker. Shove your circuit breaker up your ass. Singing we are the 99%.
Yeehaw!
Singing we are the 99%. Singing we are the 90. We are the 90. We are the 99%. Woo! Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We will see you same time next week
On the Shelley Tasker Show!